You lived in Zanzibar and you also lived in Dar es Salaam.
What's the difference between the two? And also, what is better for new expats coming to Tanzania for the first time if they want to move here?
So,
Cause we're the unapologetic nomad.
Peace, love, and light. All things good to those of you tuning in to the Unapologetic Nomads. And we are here a lovely day in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. I am Queen Nomad. Shout out to King Nomad, who you will see in just a moment. We have a special guest today here with us. So excited to interview him. And he is from Chicago, Illinois. He's right here in Dar. And we're going to see how he ended up here in Tanzania. So today we have with us Mr. Rob, who is from Chicago, Illinois. How are you today, brother?
I'm good.
Salaam.
Now, where?
Ah, Pola. Poi. What?
Pola.
Pola. Listen it up. Pola. Pola. So it is awesome to meet you. Nice to meet you. And so how long have you been here in Dar es Salaam?
Been in Dar es
Or
Salaam.
let's say Tanzania.
So Tanzania. I came to Tanzania during COVID. So originally lived in Zanzibar. Came in November of 21. Lived there for a couple of years, and I moved to Dar July of last year.
Wow.
And I've been here since then.
Awesome. So what made you make the move from the U.S. to here?
I've always thought about being an expat, and during the excuse me, and during the lockdown, I needed to get out of the states, and I spent a lot of time traveling, mostly in Mexico, because that's where Americans could go at the time. So I spent a lot of time in Tulum, a lot of time in Playa del Carmen, Cancun. From there, I ended up going to Morocco on a group trip with some friends, and wanted to go to the beach.
Okay.
The only beach that was open was in Tanzania,
All right.
and had never been here before. In fact, some people who were at the palace that I was staying at said, I would tell you to go to the beaches on Zanzibar because they're gorgeous, but now's a bad time to go because it's very dangerous there." I'm like, "Oh, why is it dangerous?" He said, "You don't know, they have no COVID restrictions." I'm like, "Zanzibar it is."
That's funny.
And it was amazing in 2021 to get to Zanzibar, and there minimal mask requirements, almost no social distancing. It was like what was going on in the rest of the world wasn't happening there. And yeah, went back to the States, sold my earthly goods, and moved here November of 20. Yes, moved here with 2 suitcases in November of 21.
That's awesome.
And learned all about island life and slow internet and everything closing at 8 p.m. All those things.
That's interesting. You sound like a nomad as well. So, how did you feel when you first arrived here? Is this your first time? Was your first time during COVID when you got here?
Yeah, when I got here during COVID, it was my first time in Africa, period.
Really?
Yes.
How did you feel?
It was amazing. Interesting. I've never been like back to Africa, motherland. I tell people, I have to admit, I came to Africa on the National Geographic tour. I'm going to ride camels in the Sahara Desert. I'm going to go see the pyramids. I'm going to go take a picture of Mount Kilimanjaro and say I climbed it. But it was just kind of just touristy things, great wonders of the world. But when I got off the plane in Zanzibar, it was just kind of released this breath that I didn't know I was holding, and it just felt like being at home. So who knows? Maybe I have roots in East Africa. I haven't explored that, but yeah.
When you were on a plane about the land, did you cry?
No, I was just like, "Ooh, look," just didn't. It was no significance to me at all. But there was something about just touching the ground and breathing the air. Attitude just changed. And I tell people, one thing that's funny is, being from Chicago, you got to appreciate a little bit of low-level corruption. So there was something welcoming about, before I got on the plane to come to Zanzibar, I got all my COVID tests, all this itinerary, stack of paperwork. And I'm walking in, I get to immigration, give the guy this whole portfolio, and he just does this and throws it in a box. So, stamps my visa and just lets me go through. And I'm like, huh. So I guess we don't really need that. So it was interesting. So it felt like home from the beginning, and I made so many great friends. And, probably one of the more welcoming places I've ever been.
Okay.
Wow.
And it's again, as I said earlier, I'd never been back to Africa type of person, but at this point, I couldn't imagine living in any place other than Africa.
Wow.
How many countries have you been to?
Around the world, probably 35, 40.
Okay.
So I've basically been through all of Central America, all of South America,
Wow.
half of the Caribbean,
Wow.
most of Western Europe, a couple of countries in Asia, and then I've been to Tanzania, Kenya, Ethiopia, Malawi, Mozambique, South Africa, Mauritius,
All right.
Seychelles, I think that's in Uganda.
All right.
So, out of all the countries you've been to, what is your least favorite and your most favorite?
Least favorite and most favorite, it's hard to say. I'd have to say Tanzania's my favorite because that's where I've chosen to make home.
Okay.
But it's hard to just pick one place because there's, I love South Africa, Joburg in particular. Amazing steak, great restaurants, fast internet, Amazon. It's all the privileges of being in the States without actually having to fly 21 hours.
Yeah.
Zanzibar, again, most welcoming place, best beaches. Love the food in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. Least favorite was probably Mozambique. Went there. I have to revisit that because, again, I went in for my birthday in August, and it was cold and rainy because it was wintertime there.
Okay.
Yes, well, it's kind of winter like here. I mean, it's not snowing,
South.
but yeah, because it's Southern Africa. August is winter. So again, it wasn't like Chicago winter, but to leave, 90 degrees in Dar and go to 60s and raining, and it was a lot more expensive than I expected it to be. Mozambique,
Really?
yeah, at least Maputo. Maputo is fairly expensive.
Oh, wow.
And again, it might just be relatively expensive, but it felt like being in like a second tier American city. So it wasn't like being in Miami or New York or anything like that. It had the expenses of, let's say, of being in Dallas, or Charlotte or something like that, where you're, every time you walk out the door, you're spending $100.
Oh no.
So and especially coming from Tanzania, it was a shock.
So, how would you compare the cost of living in the U.S. to here?
It's a fraction. What I paid for rent in my last place in Orlando is more than all of my expenses combined here.
Oh my goodness!
And that's even considering that in Orlando I was renting an empty box. So how we have in the States, you don't have furnished apartments.
Right.
So so you're paying let's say $1,500, $1,800 a month for rent, and you still have to get utilities, you still have to furnish everything. I was in a condo building, so I had to pay for my parking. So by you add everything up, it's easily $2,000 a month. I pay about half of that maybe for all of my expenses here, and that's in a furnished apartment. So it's very different. Now that said, there are places here where you can go broke if you choose.
Okay.
There's this condo building. I believe it was in Oyster Bay. You can pay $4,000 a month You know, it's like Miami prices. You know, $4,000 a month for a 1 or 2 bedroom.
Yeah, because when people ask, and I'm like, you can find whatever level you looking for. If you're looking for, you want to live modestly, you can find it. If you want to live high end, you can find it. In the middle, you can find it. Exactly. You know what I mean? So it's based on your choices. That's good.
Yeah. They have something here for everyone.
Yeah,
Definitely. And the weather's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So something interesting about your story. You have a lot of things interesting, actually. You lived in Zanzibar, and you also lived in Dar es Salaam. So, what's the difference between the two? And also, what is better for new expats coming to Tanzania for the first time if they want to move here?
So, thinking of the differences between the two, it's a lot of it is personal preference and what your personal situation is. Zanzibar is amazing, but it's island life. You know, so if you go to one market and they say they don't have chicken, you're not going to go to the next market and find chicken. That means there's probably no chicken on the island. You know, little things like that. Internet is slow. Roads are bad in some places. You know, so there's some infrastructure things. But some of the most beautiful beaches in the world, very laid back, amazing fresh fruit. You know, it's I lost weight just living there. Coming to Dar, again, as a digital nomad, Dar is just an easier place to live. The infrastructure is better. You have what we would recognize in the States as grocery stores, a lot more restaurants, a lot more activity. One thing that I experienced that was different is the month of Ramadan. Zanzibar, everything pretty much comes to a stop. Here in Dar, it slows down, but it doesn't stop. There's still a reverence for the holy month, but restaurants are still open during the day. Okay. As opposed to Zanzibar, where everything is closed from sunup to sundown. You know, so there's positives and negatives to both, but it really depends on what you want. Right. I would say Dar, particularly in, you know, if you're in Mikocheni, Bezi Beach, you know, on this side of town, Saki, it's probably a softer landing coming from the States. Okay. Because there's a lot more that you would be familiar with. You don't have, I don't want to call it deprivation, because the problems of Zanzibar, well, my criticisms of Zanzibar are not Zanzibar specific. They are, for the most part, island specific. Okay. That unless you're in Hong Kong, Mauritius, you know, there's a handful of islands that are amazing, but most islands in the world, you pay higher prices. You have to deal with shortages. You have to deal with so infrastructure. I mean, that's just, it's an island thing because everything's imported. Okay. You know, so it's not, so those criticisms aren't Zanzibar specific. They're just a part of island life just about everywhere you go in the world. So it can be, but if you don't need high speed internet, things like that, if you don't care about certain things, Zanzibar is a great place because it's very tranquil, very, very peaceful, and some of the most beautiful beaches in the world. You know, to get there as often as I can. So
you came on a trip, right? To visit. What made you decide to stay? And you have some great news too. Well, to go with that. what
that's later in the story. That's later in the story.
But let's back it up a little bit.
The first 2020. Yes, in 2021. I just it was a visit. I felt it. Yeah, it was a visit. It was just a holiday. You know, was planned to be here for about 5 days. Ended up being here about 3 weeks. And just fell in love with it and just planned to come here because. From that, at that point, I didn't see the lockdown ending. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to be trapped, let me be trapped in a wonderful place, you know? So that's how I ended up just up and moving to Zanzibar. In terms of now coming to Dar last year, got married.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's the news.
Yes, that's the news. Met a wonderful Tanzanian woman, and we were recently married. Yes, my Zanzibar friends,